Today, I'm interviewing a child-free woman whose story you do not want to miss. Brita shares a raw and honest exploration of one of the most challenging scenarios in relationships. The discovery that one partner wants a child and the other does not. In this episode, Brita peels back the layers of her decision-making process, reveals the internal struggles, the relationship tensions, and ultimately the path to self-discovery. She also shares how my program Is Child-Free for Me helped her in very unexpected ways. So I'm really excited to have Brita on the show today. Brita is a 39-year-old child-free woman living in California. And I know that so many of you will relate to her story because Brita found herself in a situation where her husband wanted kids and she just wasn't sure if she did or not. So I'm excited to dive into this conversation. It's a lot of layers. You're going to be really interested in how all this unfolds. So welcome to the show, Brita. I'm excited to have you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
I remember that when we first spoke, when you initially reached out to me about my program, you shared with me how you always saw motherhood as part of your story. And I just wanted you to explain a little bit about what that means for you.
I'm the oldest of three children. I have a brother and a sister. I come from a family that's super close. And so growing up, we spent a lot of time together as a family. All of my family now lives in the same area, in the Bay Area. We spend a lot of time together. So that's just something that I always saw as being part of my life in the future. When I would envision myself as an adult, I always
Yeah.
imagined myself married and with children.
So, what happened that made you think, there is another path here for me to take?
Well, I was fortunate to have parents that never pressured me to do anything. So, like, they wanted me to get a good education and be happy and have a career, but they never pressured me to settle down. They never pressured me to get married or have children. And I think maybe part of the reason why is because we did have some family members and close friends, family friends who didn't have children. And I think that although we never explicitly like talked about those choices or those circumstances, it was there. And so there were some examples kind of in the back of my mind and my subconscious that there were ways to, live a fulfilling life without them.
Yeah, I think that's super helpful because I talk to so many people that do not have any child-free people in their lives, never did while they were growing up. So it definitely makes it a lot harder to imagine it, especially since media, social media, film, books, you often don't see the child-free life being represented. So I definitely can see how that was helpful for you. 'Cause I know that you started dating your ex-husband really young. About how old were you?
We were 19 when we met.
Okay, so you met at 19, and how long were you dating before you decided to get married?
For almost 10 years. I was 29 when we got married.
Okay, so then you didn't have the dating pool and practice of going out on first dates, second dates, third dates, and having this conversation come up or this question come up, or even having to bring this up because you were together with him the whole time.
Correct. Yeah. And I mean, at that point, pretty much, I think both of us assumed that it was going to be something we would do in the future, would be to have children.
Did you check in with each other and say, okay, we're still under the assumption that this is something we're going to do?
I don't remember explicitly having that conversation. We never did anything like premarital counseling, but we were purchasing a property together. So school districts for future children were something that we kind of discussed in that context. So I think it was still an implied.
How do you feel about it now as far as how popular it is that this conversation doesn't take place?
I'm
Mhm.
not sure it would have made a whole lot of difference in our case
Okay.
because we were young and we weren't planning on having kids young. And so it felt so far in the future. And I think we felt
Yeah.
like we had a lot of time to figure it out. And it wasn't
Mhm.
until like we started to really approach that 30, 31 that the pressure all started like really fast and started appearing.
Okay, so tell me about some of that pressure. What started happening for you? Was the pressure just on you? Was it on him? What went down?
Well, I think this is probably common, but as the woman in the relationship, the one who presumably is going to have to give birth to the children, I started thinking about that in context of my age more. So I think I was like feeling that pressure that if this is something we want to do, we needed to do it soon. Being a doctor, I know that those risks go up with age. And that's something that was always very important to me to respect. I did not want to physically undergo and put myself at those risks at a later age. And so to me, it was really important that if I were going to choose to have children, to actually like start trying to do that earlier.
So at this point, while this is happening and you're probably around your early 30s, did you have a conversation with him and let him know what was going on?
Mhm. Yeah. So I tried to start bringing this up and I wanted to talk about it. I wanted for us to have these conversations, but he wasn't really in a place where he could have the bandwidth to do so. And so we kind of just kept tabling the discussion.
How much time went by before you said to yourself, I need to have this conversation again, or at least try to get some answers this time?
So I probably would try to bring it up again, maybe every year to 2 years. But it wasn't until I was 37 that I
Hmm.
was incredibly firm. Like, we are having this conversation
Hmm.
like now.
You're ruminating about this and thinking about this all the time. So you're thinking, I am letting all this time go by to give him some space to think about it. And then you mention it, and the response is, we're talking about this again. We just talked about this. Or why are we having this conversation again? Was that similar to how he felt at the time?
I think, I don't want to like speak for how he felt, but I think that in
Hmm.
his life he had a lot going on that was more urgent to deal with.
Okay.
And, in my life, I felt like this was urgent for me to deal with because
Mm,
I've always felt very strongly that it's so much for the woman to physically go through and that
yeah.
a lot of times is minimized. So I think that I don't know how much men can relate to that.
Why do you think that at the time, so much time would go by before you mentioned it again? What was your feeling about it?
I think I was trying to be understanding. I was trying to be a good wife. I was trying to like not be pushy, trying not to rush things. I mean, I really wanted things to like work out between us. So I didn't want to be losing ground and pushing him over the edge to his breaking point by like insisting that we have these conversations. So it's just like, okay, let's keep waiting, keep waiting. But it was so hard because it was all consuming. I mean, it's just always something that was in the back of my mind, that I had to
Yeah.
deal with and to be
Mhm.
constantly pushing it away, it took so much mental energy.
Yeah, and I think that's what's really important to remember because you explain how you weren't experiencing the pressure from your parents or family or friends or maybe even coworkers. We haven't discussed that, but the pressure that you were feeling was very internal. And that internal pressure can just feel so heavy. I mean, I had a similar experience. It just feels like you're carrying so much weight, and the ruminating can be so intense. And all this is going on within, and the outside world has no idea that this is even happening. So, does that resonate with you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's
Mhm.
these little things, right? It's like, okay, if I have my first kid at 35, then the second one's going to be 37. How old am I going to be by the time they are in college? What implications does this have for me financially, physically, career wise? It's just like this constant, how's the maternity leave going to factor in? Like all these questions that I was
And
suppressing.
unanswered questions, just
Yeah.
question after question after question, but not really getting answers. And when you're seeking answers, you're still on standby because this conversation can't even be had. At what point did the pausing of this topic shift? And then finally, you both said, who came to whom and said, okay, we need to have this conversation. This is how I'm feeling.
My ex-husband and I had been living apart for a while because of the career situation, and so we were long distance for a couple of years, which was another challenge. But
Yeah, I'm sure.
but we were finally living in the same place again, and I had moved in order to be where his job was. So I was 36 at the time I moved, and it took me a while to settle into my new job. for like 6 months to a year. But once I felt like I had done that, then I was approaching like 37 and I was like, okay, we need to decide this now.
How does that affect your relationship, or at least for you?
It puts a lot of pressure on the relationship. It's hard to enjoy someone else's company when you feel like you had this unresolved issue. And so I think it really puts a strain. It really put a strain on the relationship for me.
Did any resentment start to build up because of his lack of wanting to discuss this?
Oh yeah, for sure. I
Mhm,
I definitely said some unkind things to him about the fact that he like forced me to wait so long to make this decision and that's
mhm.
not entirely fair, but that's how I felt at the time. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I think that makes sense. It's such a big decision to make. If not, I mean, Rick and I always talk about how it's the biggest decision that we can make in our lives. And it's understandable that when this is just it being ignored, and maybe perhaps you don't feel seen, you don't feel heard, it can start building these negative emotions towards your partner. I mean, I think that completely makes sense.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
totally. All
Yeah.
those things. Yep.
Mhm. So during this time when you are essentially on hold, did you have friends that were having kids? Did the people around you start getting pregnant? And if so, what was that affecting what you were going through at all?
So at the time, my sister was pregnant and we're super close. So she was going
Mm.
through that, and that was a little bit of added pressure because of, if we were going to have kids, it was something that I wanted to kind of time, with other people so that, cousins could have a relationship with each other and things like that. Definitely the majority of my friends have children and had them a while ago. So like were already probably, 2, 3 years old at this point.
Essentially, what it feels like is you're moving forward in life, right? You are working on your career, you're building your career, but you are seeing people moving forward with the kid thing. We're starting to see
Yeah.
our friends and family get pregnant, people have toddlers, people have older kids. So there's essentially the traditional family is being built around you, very similar to the family that you grew up with. So, what happened next?
What I really realized I needed to do was make this decision for myself at that point.
Mm.
So then I was like, I can't keep waiting for like someone else to decide what is going to happen in my life. So I started doing some research. I found your podcast. I started reading some books and talking to somebody professionally to kind of help me work through making this decision for me.
Did he know that this was going on, that you're trying to go through this self-discovery process of what your decision is? Was he in the loop of that?
I was trying to keep him in the loop. Yeah, I was trying to tell him, "Okay, I'm, like, moving forward with trying to figure these things out." Yeah. I don't know how good of a job I did with being explicit, but my intention was to let him
Okay.
know.
Okay. So you're going through this process of trying to come to a decision. You've decided, look, I need to do this on my own. And then he came to you and told you what?
So then as time went on, I think he also tried to think about the decision from his standpoint, like making the decision for him after I started kinda going through that process.
Do you think that he started going through the process because you were going through it?
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah,
So he's
because
on his own just self-discovery journey and you're both
correct.
doing it, which ideally sounds wonderful because you should make these decisions on your own. Okay.
So he shared with me that he was trying to get some clarity on what he wanted for his life and his goals 6 months later. And then we did, we were having some counseling sessions together as well. And so
Okay.
then he did share with me that he decided he did want children and a family to like 100% be a part of his life story.
Did he share this information with you inside the counseling session or in private?
I think it was in private first. Yeah.
Okay. So after all this time of him feeling like, let's put this on hold, he comes to you and says, I've made my decision. I 100% want to have children. What was your immediate reaction to that news?
I was happy for him that he had made that decision and come to a decision
Mhm.
because By that point, I had already decided that I definitely didn't want children, and I knew that having made that decision was a weight lifted for me, right? Because I felt like the in between was so hard. So I was happy that he had gotten that clarity. But then
Mhm.
I was also sad because I knew that it meant that we were not going to be able to stay together.
So was there a point that you felt we can still somehow meet halfway and one of us can change our minds? Was there a point that either one of you felt that? Or was there such a line drawn in the sand that it became clear, okay, we can no longer move forward together?
So we both have demanding professional lives. We both shared with each other that we did not want to really like cut back on what we were doing professionally
Mm,
and agreed that in order to have a family, it was very clear that we would need to basically hire like full-time help, either hired help, live-in help, or have relatives live with us in order to be able to like have children. Otherwise, there would be no way one of us would have to really cut back professionally. I knew that that was not something I was willing to do. That's just not the type of lifestyle that I would be okay with.
got it.
Yeah. So I think once he said that like he definitely wanted children, I knew for sure that I wasn't the person who could do that with him.
Right, because that essentially would mean that you would need to give up a part or a full part of your professional career
Yes.
because you weren't feeling comfortable with having a nanny raise your child full time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
In a different part of my life, I might have been willing to really scale back temporarily, or I might have been willing to entertain those possibilities. Or perhaps if we were in a different geographic location, then I
Mhm.
think maybe things would have been different earlier on. But I think that circumstances that we found ourselves in at that point in time, I'll never forget when one of my friends asked me, because, we were out talking about, did I talk to my friends like about this decision? And one of my good friends asked me, like, well, why do you want kids? And this was probably when I was like 35. And I was like, wait a minute, why do I actually want them?
Mhm.
And I kept thought about that so many times. And then in this moment, I was like, why do I want kids? I don't actually want them. And so I had so much clarity about the fact that in that moment, if I had stayed and I had been willing to go down that path, it would have been a complete like sacrifice to give him that at the
Mhm.
expense of so many other things that were important to me.
I've had so many messages from women saying, I think I'm at this crossroads where my partner wants kids and I don't. And obviously, depending on the individual situation, it can just feel so complicated. And the idea of moving forward with a divorce just seemed so scary and daunting and sad and heartbreaking that oftentimes couples do try to meet in the middle. And when with this particular topic, meeting in the middle means that someone is not going to pursue the path that they truly want. What was it like for you to look into the future and think about the end of your relationship?
For so many years, I felt like we had been trying to compromise. And in a way, it was like there is some sort of,
Do you think maybe relief? Is that
yeah,
the
like I
right
was going to
word?
say relief. Yeah, a relief or kind of like a release of like obligation for both of us, because
Yeah.
he's trying to make it work with me. I'm trying to make it work with him. Our goals just aren't aligning anymore. And although there's all this pain to go through and actually ending the relationship, at the end, there is like a way for us both to potentially have what we want in the future,
Yeah.
so I think both of us kind of saw that and didn't make it any less painful. But I think, I'm grateful that like I was able to see that there could be a way forward. And I have a lot of friends who have gone through relationships ending kind of at this stage in their lives. And so it really helped to be able to see them in the future, and having gone through that and come out the other side.
I mentioned to you that you and I both got divorced. We were the same age and we went through very similar experiences. And I think that for women specifically, once you are getting divorced and you're nearing 40, A lot of limiting beliefs start circling through your head. Oftentimes, we know what we want, right? You say to yourself, I'm leaving this relationship for various reasons, but one large reason is the fact that I don't want kids. However, why am I feeling the way I'm feeling? Why am I feeling confused? Why am I feeling maybe a sense of shame? Why am I feeling anxiety over this? And I think that it's really important for women to know that even after you make your decision, all these layered, complicated feelings still exist, which is essentially what you were dealing with. Do you know what was triggering all these limiting beliefs? Because I know that we joked about it once, but you were telling me that you felt washed up, that you were thinking, your days are numbered, it's over. And these are all very common thoughts that we have about ourselves because I felt the same way. But maybe you can share a little bit of what your experience was with that because people will look at you like you're this professional, confident, strong woman, but yet it's so hard to avoid these thoughts.
It was so hard in the beginning to not feel like, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna be 40 soon, and I don't like, I'm gonna be divorced, and I don't have kids, and I don't have a family." There's so many people that would look at that life and be like, what a shame," or like, "How sad."
Mhm.
And I think it just comes from like the constant conditioning that if you don't have children, then you are missing something that we hear just inundated like crazy. I
Day
think
in, day out.
day in, day out, like in social
Yeah.
media. I mean, one of the things that
Mhm.
really helped is I got off social media almost 3 years ago.
Mhm.
And I don't, like the friends that I have, I like love to see their pictures of, but what I don't want to see is the things that aren't reality, and like the comments and things like that. So that really helped to let go of that.
It just becomes too much, right? We're getting pulled in multiple directions. We're starting to be confused between what's right and what's wrong. We're starting to try to find what's right and what's wrong, but when we're in it, it's impossible to see it ourselves. It just gets so complicated.
As I was going through all of this, your program helped me so much because it really focused me inwards to think about, what do I want? How do I want to feel? What choices do I want to make for myself? And to recognize the times where it's just, I would start to get anxious and like feel trapped because I felt like I was missing out on something or I felt like I would regret something. But they're just like, that's just life, like no matter what you're talking about, you're always going to be missing out on something based on a choice that you made. And so that you can't live your life that way.
I know we can't, or we're going to continue driving ourselves nuts. What initially motivated you to call me and potentially join my program?
Well, I had been listening to your podcast for a while. I can't remember exactly when I found it, but as soon as I
Mhm.
found it, I listened to all the episodes. And then I was getting your ones that would come out. So then I was current. And then I remember you talking about like your program and how like you're about to start a new cohort. And I was going through a lot because we had decided to get divorced and we were like dealing with the filing and I was going to be moving and starting a new job and all those things. And so I didn't really have like the bandwidth to enter something, but I listened to one of your podcast episodes. It was actually my last day of work at my old job. And then I was like, I'm gonna reach out today. So I was like, this is great timing. Like I've just wrapped up a bunch of stuff. Now this is like perfect.
It's really interesting because I find that oftentimes we feel like we can handle it ourselves. And I think I'm talking about myself too here. We're like, I got this. I'm going to figure this out. I don't necessarily think that I need the support. I'm going to read more books. I'm going to listen to more podcasts. I'm going to do the thing. But we get to the point where it becomes very clear and very obvious that we're not really moving forward and that support could potentially be really beneficial through this process. And what I really enjoyed about our initial conversation when you reached out to me was that you were in such a transition period. And oftentimes, when as women, we're in transition periods, again, we go through all of this alone when we don't necessarily need to.
I just thought it would be so wonderful to like be able to spend time with you and the other women who are going to be in the program who are like in the same boat as me, just trying to figure things out. Yeah, it was so great.
So I always
So
ask
I always
people this, and I want to get your perspective. What was it like the first time you jumped into the group and there's ladies in there that you've never met before, and we're talking about really deep personal topics and discussions, and we're having private chats. How did that feel like for you? What was that experience like?
I mean, there were people coming from all different situations and of different ages, but I felt like everybody could relate to each other because we're all struggling with this decision. So it just felt like so good to be able to say those things to like an audience that it would resonate with.
Yeah, I think it's fun and interesting not to have to say but or set caveats before you're gonna make a statement because the statement that you're making everybody can relate to. So we don't have to justify what we're feeling or justify what we're saying because essentially everyone's in the same boat. So I'm glad that you had that experience. It means a lot. So you mentioned earlier that you moved to where your husband was working. And I know that transition meant that you went to a very suburban area. So tell me how that affected you, your choice, or how you saw that, how that felt for you.
The place I was living previously, I felt like there were a lot of neighbors that I had that were women in middle age to older without children.
Hmm.
All over the place. When I moved, it was not that, and, like, I mean, I was living in definitely more suburban area, like you said, so it tended to be more, like, single family homes, big yards, things like that, which kinda lends itself to families. Everybody was super nice, but in the mornings when moms and dads were dropping off their kids to the school bus, I'd be, like, the one person walking just with my dog, and I just remember it feeling, like, really isolating. Okay, I'm, like, the only person in this neighborhood who doesn't have children.
I'm wondering if you saw any changes moving from a suburban area back to California. Is it energetically different?
There may have been, like, more of that diversity that I just wasn't seeing in the area that I was in before, but here it's, like, very, very, apparent, and
Hmm.
so people choosing to just live in ways that are not your traditional nuclear family structure, so it feels more like a place that I can fit in a little bit more, and it's also home for me, so that part, like, helps too.
So there was one thing that you said to me at the end of the program, and I wanted you to just expand on it a little bit because you said this program has not only helped me with this decision, but it really has opened up the doors to other decisions in my life. So maybe you can just dive into that a little bit of what you meant by that.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, I very much feel like the way you conducted your program and like the life lessons that you were helping us to realize and the introspection is applicable to like everything in life. Just trying to figure out like what is it that I truly value and how do I want to spend my time, what's important to me, and why am I making the decisions that I'm making. I feel like there's a lot of things that it's helped me with as I'm starting this new job and like phase of my life, boundary setting and like deciding what do I want, like independent of like what society or what my job or what my family is telling me to do. What is truly the best decision for me? I feel like before in my life I had a lot of like internal conflict. Oh, I truly want to do this, but I feel shame about choosing what I know I truly want. And then so I would give in and do what everyone else wanted me to do. And then, of course, be unhappy and be burned out and not feel good. And so as I move forward, I'm trying in very little ways to like continue making these decisions that are more true to me. And it feels good. It's hard, but it feels really good.
And it's something that I take really seriously, making decisions that are right for us, because oftentimes we get so stuck in what is right and what is wrong, but we don't ask ourselves what is right for us because we're taking so many things into consideration when it comes to our decision making. So that makes me really happy to hear. And I'm glad that the tools and the resources that you learn you can use moving forward because it is so helpful to just put ourselves first when it comes to these major life decisions. So I'm glad that this is happening for you as well. So let's go into present day Brita. How you're feeling, what's going on.
I feel like I had this like trench to get through. And it was hard to tell where the bottom of the trench was because it wasn't smooth. So there were some ups and downs in the bottom of the trench, but I finally feel like I'm like climbing out the other side.
Yay!
And so I'm sure there's going to be some tips on the way back out,
Always, always.
but I feel overall like really good. I feel like empowered. I feel like by living this and being true to myself, I'm going to be able to bring my best self to all aspects of my life moving forward. And I'm also feeling like very empowered to not have to explain myself to others.
Mm.
And that's another thing that I thank you for, like, helping us and helping, like, practice with us because I think especially as women, we feel the need to do that.
Because oftentimes as women, we can see that taking that approach as being unkind when actually we're just being unkind to ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting that we can fall into that trap. Whereas where we feel confident and we're putting ourselves first, and this is a big criticism and judgment of child free women and child free life in general or child free people, is this quote unquote selfish aspect of putting ourselves first. When in reality, putting ourselves first is not only lighting us up and giving us the ability to move forward in a really positive and loving way. But at the same time, it allows us to light up and share love and kindness with everyone around us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like I have so much more bandwidth to be able to, like, bring my best self to everybody who's in my life because I am living the way that I choose to.
Okay, so as you're going through your transition process, what are your thoughts, if any, about dating and approaching this topic while you're dating?
So I think that's still a long way off for me,
Hmm.
but I keep thinking back to something that you said before I joined the program in our initial conversation, which was that you really wanted me to be at a spot where I feel super confident with my decision going into that next phase because what I really don't want to happen is for someone else to make that decision for me or to like influence me.
This is another place and time where women can be judged because I remember after my divorce, it was a lot of, okay, when are you going to start dating? When are you going to have a boyfriend? When are you going to move forward? Are you getting married again? And I felt like, whoa, I need a little breathing room. So I was almost nervous to even ask you that question, but I thought it was important for people to understand how you were going to approach it in the future. And I think it's really important that each one of us decides whatever again is best for us during that transition process. After, maybe some of us decide that we want to start dating right away, some of us want to wait 5 years, 10 years, some of us are completely done with partnership, and that anything we decide ever in life is okay because that's what's best for us.
I love that. And I'm so grateful that I'm in a spot in my life where I can fully internalize and live that.
As we're approaching the end of something, like you mentioned before, it becomes harder to see the light. But as we're going to the other side and you're starting to see the light, as you mentioned, it just opens up so much opportunity, possibility, joy, love. So, Brita, you are so amazing. It has been such an honor to meet you, to guide you through this program, to become friends with you. And I am just so, so excited for your future. And thank you so much for sharing your story because I know that a lot of women listening to this are really going to resonate.
Oh, thank you so much, Veronica. I feel like I'm the lucky one that like I came across you and like you've just been such a role model for me. Your program, the work you do is so amazing. It's helped me so much and you are such an amazing person. So thank you.
You're welcome. I'll take it. Thank you, Brita. Bye.
I